Elizabeth Richmond had a corner of an office on the third floor. It was the section of the museum closest, as it were, to the surface, that section where correspondence with the large world outside was carried on freely, where least shelter was offered to cringing scholarly souls. At Elizabeth's desk on the highest floor of the building, in the most western corner of the office, she sat daily answering letters offering the museum collections of pressed flowers or old sea chests brought back from Cathay. It is not proven that Elizabeth's personal equilibrium was set off balance by the slant of the office floor, nor could it be proven that it was Elizabeth who pushed the building off its foundations, but it is undeniable that they began to slip at about the same time. The instinctive thought of every person connected with the museum, up to and including the paleontologist, had been to repair, to patch together, to reconstruct, rather than to build anew in a new site. And in order to repair the building at all, the carpenters had found it necessary to drive a hole the height of the building, from the roof to the cellar, and had chosen Elizabeth's corner of the third floor to effect an entrance to their shaft. On the second floor, the hole in the wall was discovered through a sarcophagus, and on the first floor, not unreasonably, behind a little door marked "Do Not Enter." Elizabeth's office allowed of no concealment, and so she came to work of a Monday morning to find that directly to the left of her desk, and within reaching distance of her left elbow as she typed, the wall had been taken away, and the innermost skeleton of the building exposed. She was the first person in the room that morning. She hung her coat and hat neatly on the coat hanger just inside the door, and then went across the room and looked down with a swift sense of dizziness and an almost irresistible temptation to hurl herself downward into the primeval sands upon which the museum presumably stood. Far below her she could hear the faintly echoing voices of the guides on the first floor. Today was an open day, and the guides were apparently cleaning their fingernails. The complaining voice, which, slightly louder, seemed to come from the second floor, may have been that of the archaeologist, outside the tomb, finding fault with the air. Elizabeth, looking down, sighed because she had a headache, and because she had a headache nearly all the time, and turned to her desk to contemplate a letter offering the museum a model skyscraper made of matchsticks. The faint sense of holiday, inspired by not having a fourth wall to her office, had faded almost entirely by the time she opened the third letter on her desk. When she had read the letter once, she got up and looked down again into the cavity of the building, and then returned to her desk and sat down, thinking, "I have a headache." "Dear Lizzie," the letter read, "your fool's paradise is gone now for good. Watch out for me, Lizzie, watch out for me, and don't do anything bad, because I am going to catch you, and you will be sorry, and don't think I won't know, Lizzie, because I do. Dirty thoughts, Lizzie, dirty Lizzie." Elizabeth Richmond was 23 years old. She had no friends, no parents, no associates, and no plans beyond that of enduring the necessary interval before her departure with as little pain as possible. Since the death of her mother 4 years before, Elizabeth had spoken intimately to no person, and the aunt with whom she lived required little of her beyond a portion of her weekly pay and her prompt presence at the dinner table. Although she had arrived daily at the museum for 2 years, since her employment the museum had been in no way different. The letters signed per E.R., and the endless listings of exhibits vouched for by E. Richmond were the outstanding traces of her presence. There were half a dozen people who spent their time in the same office, and half a dozen others who occupied other offices on the third floor, and all of these knew Elizabeth and said good morning to her, and even, "How are you today?" This on particularly bright spring mornings. But those of them who, in philanthropy or mortal kindness, had endeavored to become more friendly with her, had found her blank and unrecognizing.